I have dynamic disabilities. Okay, so there's two definitions of dynamic. The second one refers to energetic, positive attitude, full of energy, and having new ideas. So the first meaning more applies to dynamic disabilities, which refers to ever-changing, fluctuating, etc. The term is reported to have been coined by Brian, I hope I'm not butchering the name, Branus. Dynamic disability, which tends to fluctuate in severity, pain, energy, etc., in a difficult to predict manner. Those with dynamic disability are able to do certain tasks at one time but unable to complete those tasks at another time. So my area of work required me to work with persons with disabilities at times. So I had some level of understanding that what I was going through with my illnesses fell under the spectrum of disabilities. But I still had so many things to learn and understand, because even in that area of work, we hardly touched on people or persons with dynamic disabilities, and we hardly touched on or recognizing the intersection between illnesses, particularly chronic illnesses, and disabilities. You know, when I was with my specialist, we would talk up when she first interviews me every single time when I go for a consultation. She would ask questions like, you know, how much can you move in the morning? How long does the stiffness with the arthritis last? For how many hours? What can you do? What activities can you perform in the house? What activities can you not perform in the house? How do you feel in terms of fatigue? How often does it happen? What is your mental state? So there was never really the word disabled used. It was more about limitations and impairments. But then the first time that we really touched on speaking about my illnesses falling under disabilities was when I had to fill out a questionnaire for a particular type of medication. There are the injections that I have talked about, the biologic injections, where it's a questionnaire that asks you, and it was very plain, it was clear that it was referring to disabilities and the need to use mobility devices or any other assistive devices, the devices that assist me to do chores, activities at home. It might be a handle, it might be a type of tin opener, etc. Dimitri Lacour, excuse me if I'm butchering your name, said the following: learn about the diverse range of experiences unique to disabled people, deepen your understanding of what it means to live with a long-term, invisible, chronic, or acquired disability. So filling out that questionnaire was the first time really it was sort of a blatant acknowledgement of how I am impacted with my illnesses and whether they are disabilities or not. All right. If I remember correctly, even in that form, it made reference, I think, to United Nations. Don't quote me on that, but it made reference to, some protocol. Unfortunately, I don't recall, and I don't think I took a picture of the questionnaire. If I did, I'll try to find it. You know, it becomes very difficult when I started being ill to explain to people that, for instance, I use my wheelchair part-time. At home, I utilize the walker or the stick. It can be very confusing to people, like, okay, so you can walk, so what's the problem? Why don't you just walk then? I'll touch more on another video going into detail the importance of the mobility device, the wheelchair, and specifically the electronic wheelchair. But I think it was the idea that, wait a minute, but yesterday you were better. Today you have a rash on your face, or you have swelling on your face. what's happening? Did you sleep? Did something happen? Were you upset last night? You cried all night? And I remember this particular incident as well with a colleague, and she was like, oh, I was being assisted in and out of the car, and she said, oh, earlier you said it's the right side that's sore, more so than the left side, right? So you should get out with the left side first, or something like that. And I was like, no, well, it's the left side now. And I mean, probably in that case, because my arthritis affects both sides of my body equally, I probably was overcompensating by leaning more on my left side. So it also got, its pain increased basically. And I could see on their faces, they were like, but you said something different earlier. And there is just that gap of understanding how dynamic disabilities are. And in many cases, people with dynamic disabilities feel like they are thought of to be a fraud, even internalize that themselves, that, but yesterday I was okay, and now I can't wake up in the morning and do things. So it's important that it is understood that disabilities are on a spectrum, and we have such things as dynamic disabilities, so that we don't make people question their experiences. Let's look at an article by Catriona Morton. Hope I'm not butchering your name. Sometimes I'm fine, often I am not. My life with dynamic disabilities. Yesterday, I spoke at an event in front of hundreds of people. For hours, I wandered around the event space, climbing endless stairs and drinking wine with friends. This morning, things look very different. My hips feel like they're slipping out of my skeleton. Fatigue drags down my eyelids. My skin has started to erupt in familiar formations of rashes and bruises. I lie on the sofa with heating aids, waiting for the ache to ease. How can today look so different from yesterday? How can my body be fine one day and collapsing in despair the next? My conditions are a combination of genetic and autoimmune disorders, fluctuate in severity over time. Symptoms come in flares that may last weeks or months. My muscular skeleton pain may be unbearable one week and only a soft ache the next. The symptoms of my autoimmune disease can be agonizing for months, then quiet down for the same amount of time. Along with many other disabled people, I have specific identity which evades the usual rigid definitions of disability. I'm dynamically disabled. Melissa Irvin's article, #changed our lives, dynamic disabilities, and how it's different experiences with people of the same type of disability. So it's very important to remember that we all differ in our experiences. Touch on this issue that my conditions are severely affected by weather and weather changes, or drastic weather changes. It's often easier for me during spring, the season of spring, but summer, autumn, winter, the worst, in that order. Spring is better. It doesn't mean that I don't experience my symptoms, but they're a little bit better than those other seasons. I've also touched on the fact that my conditions are affected by high levels or intense stress, or stress factors that lasts longer, because stress is a normal reaction or normal experience, a normal human experience, but if that high or severe, or they last a bit too long, it really has a negative impact on me. Important to understand that our bodies and our minds really control how far and what we can do. And it's important that as someone who has certain conditions that affect your impairment or your level of execution of things, or a range of how you can do things, it's important to understand that it falls under dynamic disabilities. And these conditions have also affected some of my cognitive abilities. And like I said, it ranges. I hope you learned something about dynamic disabilities and how chronic illnesses, progressive illnesses, illnesses that get worse with time, really fluctuate and have quite an impact. I'm just showing you the study if you want to go through it. My fatigue levels are going up. Ooh, bye.